Hello everybody, Erin here, getting started with week 2, Plant Priestess Exploration. Wait for people to join. Hello everybody, just waiting for people to get on here. Hello Elizabeth. Trying to get settled here. Can't tell where I want this light. There we go. Hi Lola. Hi Devin. Just getting some incense going here. Some white sage. Hi Angie, Trina, Jennifer. If you got some smudge around or some incense, you could light it. We could all be lighting our sacred incense at the same time. In the cyber world, even though we're not together, we have these little lights around the world, little plant priestesses around the world getting together. Karina Osborne, hello. I like to burn some sort of plant material so that I can kind of get back into that mode, especially since I've been inside all day. Well, I was outside doing some shopping, but you know, just on the sidewalk from here and there. I'm just not connecting out in nature as much as I would like to be. Need to be taking some walks or something. But it's cold. Gotta bundle up. What's the saying? There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. The wrong clothing. All right, so Lola's lighting some sage. Yes. Light something. Make the smell is so powerful. And I like, it brings back some memories, some cell memories or something, something that's grounding for me. It's brings my energy down, gets me out of my head a little bit, gets me back into my body. I can only last an hour or two outside before my toes freeze. Yeah, that's probably a little longer than sometimes I can handle it. I guess I don't have the proper boots. Okay, so here we are. I would like to be talking about altars, and I'm going to be talking about some herbs today. And again, full disclosure, if you haven't been on my lives before, I always give this disclaimer of at any moment there could be a cat jumping in front of my face or a couple kids popping up on the side, usually on this side. The floors upstairs are kind of squeaky, so you might hear those, and maybe the furnace might kick in. So what you gotta do, what you gotta do. So that's what I'm doing. Okay. I did send some handouts for you. One was, it says yarrow and plantain on it. It's just a little note-taking page that I made for you because we're going to talk about yarrow and plantain as well. I don't have any live specimens like I like to have when I do my lives because they are under snow. Maybe I could have dug some out, I suppose, but so you have a little note-taking page for yourself, and then also one other one, which is a journaling page. And we'll talk about that too. So yeah, so much I can touch on this subject. Let's start with altars quickly. Not quickly, just let's start with that, because I posted a picture a while back in the Facebook group where I was showed a picture of my altar, and then had other people and ask other people to show theirs, and people did. And somebody asked, you know, what is an altar? And an altar really is a focal point in your home or your office or anywhere else that honors and celebrates and brings out the sacredness, reminds us of the sacredness by putting them out on display. The altars can have various types of meanings. You could do an ancestor altar. You could have an altar with many different things on it, you know, something that you're working towards, something that you want more of in your life, and also something that honors honors what the natural cycle is going on at that point. So like winter solstice is coming up, you could have things on the altar that would represent that. So it can be all sorts of things on the altar, but it's really a sacred focal point to bring yourself back to whatever it is that you want to be honoring and holding of value within yourself. It could be made just by you, or it could be made by a community of people. If you have a group of people that you meet with, you could make one together, such as some people call it a coven. You could do a family one if you have family, especially if you have children, that you can always find a fun way to get them to interact with it too, and let them add things onto it and just describe to them what you're doing. Some people use beautiful statues to represent a deity or many deities. I mean, the sky's the limit of what you could do on an altar. It really depends on how much size you have, how much space you have. So I have one that's on a shelf. I've had ones that were on top of like an entertainment center. I've had them on just like little trays. Somebody in the group showed a picture of a box where they keep everything in a box because they're really mobile and they have to move around quite often. I have one in a little tiny box that I keep with me for traveling, so that I can just have a few things representing my just kind of my spirituality, and have that with me if I'm in a hotel or away from home. I have an altar outside. Right now there's nothing on it but snow, but I typically use that for the solstices and equinoxes. I'll decorate that outside, and it's more of an outdoor altar, kind of like showcasing my thankfulness and my awareness to nature, the nature spirits outside. So yeah, you could do various things. You could even have everything hanging on a wall rather than having shelf-like items or having it on a bookshelf or a table. You could also just hang everything up on a wall too if you didn't have a lot of space for that. So I like to put things out that represent what's happening outside. So right now my altar has, what does it have on it? It has like a tree on it to represent just kind of the evergreens outside. They're really, in my area, the only thing that's green is the evergreens, you know, the pine trees and the spruce trees. And then I have two beautiful glittery, what I call stags, because that's a very symbolic thing at this time of the year. You know, reindeer are symbolic, and also the stag. It represents many different things, so I like to put those on there. What else do I have? Mistletoe is a very powerful symbol at this time of year, even though mistletoe doesn't grow in this part of the world for me. There are, I think there's one type of species that's around here, but mistletoe is kind of one of those symbols of winter solstice that has moved, you know, from area to area, and we keep it in a lot of our decorations and things like that now. And the way Christmas, winter solstice looks right now, it's a lot of different amalgamations of different traditions and spiritualities all putting together. I'm just checking the chat here. Oh, TV trays work well. Yes. Just I would caution you on like TV trays if you're going to have candles on there and they're really, anything that's burning, maybe even this sage and stuff, those can be a little bit flimsy, I guess, weak. They have a tendency to tip over if they get knocked a little bit, especially if you have cats or something or animals that bump it. So just, make sure you keep looking or keep an eye on it. Oh, Jennifer, that's so funny. I see that. Indoor and altar, Lola says. My kitchen one is on top of a microwave. I have a few through the house. My twins have one they made in their room also. Oh, that's awesome, Lisa. Yeah, my daughter, who's 10, is really good at it. She tends to arrange it in a way that I wouldn't, and I just have to let that go. But if I give her a set of items, she'll put that thing up real cute like and add her own flair and twist to it, and which is really great to let other people add their personality to it and their ideas. So I really try to keep mine as naturey as possible, but there are times when I put all sorts of stuff on there. So it just changes. I've been taking pictures of my altars for the last few years, and it's just fun to see how they change. And how they stay the same, how certain items come back over and over. And then I'll see a picture, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot I could put that on there too. So that's fun to get more ideas for yourself. You can use anything, really. I mean, the items that you put on your altar don't have to just be for an altar. There could be other decorations that you have in the house that you want to put on there just for a certain goal that you're looking to set. Something that you're really trying to manifest in your life and you need a visual of it, you could do that. You could even pull pictures out of the magazines and books and frame them, do all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of the reason to have an altar, celebrating the seasons, bringing in nature from the outside and putting it in display so you can really enjoy it, celebrating some special anniversary, death of a loved one, trying to remember, some pets that may have passed. There's just all sorts of things that you could put on your altar. And it could be multi-focused too. You could have your seasonal altar included with an intention that you're setting. And if you do spells or rituals, then you can add in those types of mementos on the altar as well. Jennifer says she has altars everywhere for all different intentions, but my main altar changes with the seasons. Yeah. And you could even put one at work if you have a desk or an area that you go to all the time. You could put something very small there to help you stay focused and centered. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could just be a few things that really mean a lot to you that other people may not notice because you may choose to be a little bit more quiet about your intentions or your faith or what have you. So yeah, that's a little bit on altars. And I think we'll move on to herbs because I could talk about herbs for a long, long time. I want to focus right now on yarrow and plantain. They're very, I would say, like safe, easy herbs. When I say safe, the safe herbs, I'm kind of referring to things like herbs that are don't have a lot of issues or problems with them. Like they're not going to give a lot of allergic reactions to the skin. It's kind of like when you try any kind of new lotion, face wash, even new foods. You could have a reaction to any of them. There's all sorts of reactions out there that happen to people. I know somebody who's severely allergic to chicken. I didn't even know that was a thing, but anybody can be allergic to anything. So when I say safe, I'm just saying in general, there's very few side effects that I've ever encountered. So that's what I mean by that. So yarrow, hopefully I'll be able to, I'm going to share some pictures of yarrow and plantain after this talk, and I'll share them in the Facebook group. So yarrow is this beautiful feathery looking leaf. It's very delicate looking. It's very fairy-like in my opinion. And then the flower is anywhere from white to pink. And then there's a lot of landscaped varieties. So, you know, plants have been bred and changed in the landscape industry for different colors and heights and things like that. So there's all sorts of different yarrows. There's yellow and, oh gosh, I don't even know. There's just different kinds out there. But the most common is for our area, it's native here in Wisconsin, it's white. And then there is here in the Europe region, the pink, light pink, dark pink is more of the native there. So there's been some debate over like which one's more medicinal, the white one or the pink one. And I honestly don't think it matters. That's just my humble opinion about it. I use the pink one because that's what's growing in my yard. When I bought this house, it just was here, and so I've used it. And I'm using it topically at this point. So topically is for like the skin. If you get a sting or a scratch, a cut, you can put the fresh leaf in your hand and just roll it really, really fast. And it kind of breaks up the cells, and you know, you might feel a little bit of the juices on your hand. It is quite a dry leaf, so there's not going to be a whole lot of moisture from it. But if you want, you can add a little bit of water, or if you're in a pickle, if you're in like, if you need some moisture to this mixture fast, you can use your own spit if you wanted to, especially for like a bee sting, because it has the ability to bring down pain levels. So it has some anodyne qualities, reducing the pain. You could also put that fresh leaf, chop it up real good and put it in some oil so that it stays in that oil for about, 4 weeks or so, and monitor the oil for mold. Because what happens is there's moisture in those plant leaves, and if some reason the moisture and air pocket come together, then it just sits inside that oil and creates like a nice little microcosm for growing mold in it. So air and water that's kind of entombed in some oil or something like that, that can definitely grow mold. So you just try to reduce the amount of water content in leaves or flowers before you put them into oil. Olive oil is just fine to use. It's one of the easier oils to find in my area anyway. You can find it at the grocery store. Yes, there's lots of other oils you can use, grapeseed oil and stuff like that, but I think olive oil is probably the least expensive of the ones to use. So if you had fresh leaves of yarrow, put them, pack them into a like a jar, and don't shove them in. I mean, just put them loosely into the jar, about halfway fresh, maybe even the whole thing can be, if it's loose enough, because you need space for that oil to get into between those leaves and things like that. So you pack those fresh yarrow leaves in there, and then you add your olive oil, and you just want to make sure that the oil is always on the top, and the leaves or flowers or whatever you're adding to your oil is on the bottom. You don't want it to poke up, because again, if those leaves hang out above the surface of the oil in the air, there's a greater potential that they could start to mold. Now, every day you should shake it anyway, or mix it up in some fashion to make sure that the everything is in the oil and being mixed. So if you do yarrow, what you do after about 4 weeks is you strain out the fresh leaves, and then you have this wonderful oil that can be used on the skin, like I said, for for pain. You can make it into a salve by taking 1 cup of oil and 1 ounce of beeswax, melt them together, and voila, you have a salve. Pretty easy stuff. Sometimes the salve gets pretty, if it's on the softer side, then you just need to add more beeswax, and if it's on the harder side, then you need to add more oil. And what you can do is just kind of dip a spoon in the oil, and then put it in the freezer for just about a minute and take it out. If it's really soft, then you know you just can melt a little bit more beeswax, and if it's too hard, then add some more oil. So it's a quick way to just gauge whether or not your salve is going to be too hard or too soft. And rather than just waiting, you know, you're taking your salve out, you're putting in the containers, and then you just wait and wait and wait. And then if it's not the right consistency, you have to take everything back out of your container and put it in a double boiler and get it warm again and start all over. So what else about yarrow leaf? Yarrow leaf is very good at stopping bleeding. I've experienced this. I've had a cut on my finger from being in the garden. Just take that fresh leaf and get it on there and the bleeding will stop. A little, you know, things to be cautious of is certainly if it's a really deep cut, you don't want any dirt to get in there. What I did when I cut my finger is I, you know, had something on it to stop the bleeding, and then with my other hand I chopped it up and put it in the mortar and pestle, and just what I'm trying to do is break up all the break open the plant cells so that I can get the medicinal qualities that are hidden inside the leaf. So you could certainly chew it, and some of those medicinal qualities will be going in your body as well. Chew it and then put it on the wound. Now, you know, some people have bacteria in their mouth and you don't necessarily want it to get in a wound. So if you've got like a really deep wound, you certainly want to make sure you do some cleaning of it out eventually. But if you need to stop bleeding fast, yarrow will do it. Another way to have yarrow on hand, rather than, you know, having one hand bleeding like I did and trying to pound it, is take some yarrow leaves, dry them, and then grind them into a powder so that you could just sprinkle some on your wound to get it to stop bleeding. So it's, I mean, it acts really fast. It is remarkable stuff. So let me just check the chats really quick here. I've made a salve. Jennifer's saying she's made a salve with foraged plantain, yarrow, calendula, and St. John's wort with an olive oil base. I have gotten such fabulous response to its helpfulness. I have friends that want to buy it for holiday gifts. I can forage for plantain all year where I am, but the other three are a little bit more challenging. Sometimes yarrow will stay. Yeah, that is really great. And that combination that you're using in your salve does have multiple purposes, so that it can be used for lots of things. That's really cool. And yes, giving things away as a holiday gift is awesome. You'll either get the look of like, wow, this is really cool, or like, what am I going to do with this? You like have to give instructions with it. So, would dry yarrow leaves work? Yes, dry yarrow leaves would work as well. I know herbalists who swear by only using fresh plants material for salves. I'm not that strict on it, and especially since I'm really concerned about mold growing in my oils and stuff like that. I tend to use a lot of dried herbs anyways. And you know, it's just kind of a time factor. Sometimes you just don't have time to make things during the growing season. If you're like me, I have a garden. I've got kids at home for the summer and got lots of things going on. So sometimes these winter months are great for being able to make those herbal remedies afterwards. So instead of, you know, if you have a jar, fresh material, you're going to want to put at least half to more of fresh material in there, just because they have water in them. They're bulkier, they're bigger, so they're not as concentrated as, let's say, the dried material. The dried material is more condensed, so you only need to fill up like a small jar, I don't know, about a third of the way full if possible. Some people would just say, you know, have enough dried material in there and have the oil just sitting on top, just enough to cover it. But I add more oil to it just to get as much out of it as I can. So yes, dried yarrow leaves would work if you want to make an oil and then maybe make a salve. Will the oil help stop bleeding? That I don't know. When I'm using it for stopping to bleed, I'm using the fresh or the dried material straight on something. There's even accounts of people using yarrow like the stick, or having the powder of it and putting it in the nose when there's a nosebleed. I have not tried that. But usually it's the fresh or the dried straight on. If you put it in a salve, I don't know if it would help stop bleeding with the oil. I just don't, I mean, I just haven't tried it. I think there would be some qualities to that, some help with that. Do yarrow flowers have the same property? I would suspect that they have some, though the remedy for stopping bleeding is usually the leaves. But if I had nothing else and I could just see the flower, then I would use the flower. But the leaves are the main part of the medicinal qualities of it. Would the yarrow powder be okay for a person who takes blood thinners? Well, blood thinning would makes the blood flow more so that it doesn't congeal. But I'm just talking about like a wound, just like a wound right away. It's just topical, just going to stop the blood right there. And then once the blood stops, then usually I just go and wash off the plant material and then put a bandage on it. So it's not on there for very long. Now, if you're taking yarrow internally for something, and sometimes it is added to mixes of herbal teas and stuff, usually the general rule for that is if you just drink a cup of tea here and there, and it has these plant materials in it, usually it's not going to have like a medicinal effect on you so that you have to worry about contraindications or side effects from them. But if you're taking it for like a more of a medicinal like quality, and you're going to be drinking like 3 cups a day of it continuously, then you would start to look into how that could affect other pharmaceutical medicines or other supplements that you're taking. Okay, so that's how I use yarrow. Yarrow flower, the pink flower is used quite a bit as a psychic protection. So it's made into a flower essence. That's where the flower is specifically used. So a flower essence is a very diluted, basically water alcohol mixture that is used just a couple drops under the tongue or on the skin, and it helps with like psychic protection if you need to feel like you need a barrier from people, if you're feeling like you're getting a lot of energy from people and you don't want to, things like that. If you're getting very emotional around certain people or angry, sometimes the pink yarrow flower can be a good psychic protection around that. Okay, so that's yarrow. Yarrow is very hardy in our area. It's a perennial, which means it comes back every year, and it spreads because it'll send shoots down under the soil and pop up. So it spreads really well, really, really well. I have to weed it out. I have to like keep it in one spot, else it'll just take over, which maybe that wouldn't be a problem either. But I want other things to grow as well. So it'll grow in a pot. It'll grow in a raised garden bed. It'll grow in the ground. It doesn't like wet soil, so it doesn't like clay soils. It likes well-drained soils. Typically grows in the sun. If it grows kind of in the shade, then you're not going to get so many flowers. You're going to get mostly leaves. So that's kind of some tips on growing yarrow. And it dries really well, just hanging it upside down or bringing in a few leaves and laying them in a basket or something like that. They dry really, really well and really quickly. Not a delicious tasting herb. It's not one that like tastes really great. So if it's ever added as a medicinal use to a tea blend, it's usually added with something else that tastes good. Okay, plantain. Plantain has a lot of uses to it. Again, it can be used in making an oil. It'll make a lovely green oil. Even if you put it in olive oil that's kind of yellow, it'll just make a brilliant green oil to it, especially if you use the dry or the fresh plant, the fresh leaves. Now the leaves are the part that's used for salve making in general. Let's see. It has a higher water content in those leaves, so do take some time, a few hours, and let them wilt before you chop them up and add them to oil, just to release some of that water content from it. Or you can dry them and then add them to oil as well, and let them sit for, about 4 weeks. Great for lots of things, just like bumps and bruises, really good for bruises, stings. It's just an all-purpose salve to have around for just, skin abrasions, dry skin, things like that. You certainly can eat the leaves. Smaller the better, because as they get bigger, they get tougher and tougher, and they have veins in them that are kind of stringy, and if you pull them apart, they're kind of like little hairs almost looking, but they're pretty tough. So yes, people do eat plantain in salads, and certainly could chop them up and cook, add them to a stir fry at the very end. So lots of uses for plantain. A very fun one to teach kids about, or teach anybody about, especially people who know nothing about plants. If you're outside, especially if somebody gets a bee sting right next to you, again, take a fresh leaf or 2 or 3 and just start rubbing it really vigorously through your fingers. Or if you can smash it in a mortar and pestle, that's good. If usually you'll feel that moisture from the leaves right away. If you can add a little bit more, just to kind of see if you can create like a little paste, or what we call a poultice, and then put that right on the bee sting, and it relieves the pain very fast. I've done this with people who've had bee stings, right next to me, right on the foot. We get a poultice on there, bing, bang, boom. They just were amazed at how fast it takes away that pain. Yeah, so and plantain grows everywhere. And there's different species of plantain, but it grows all over the world. People think of it as a weed here in my area. They don't like it in their lawns because it's kind of if you get a lot of them, they're kind of not as fun to walk on sometimes, but they're always green. If we're not having a lot of rain, they're always green. It's perfect. So I keep a lot of them in my yard. I even have a patch of plantain they get really beautiful and green and wonderful. My husband does not like to be stepping on them in the lawn, so he will pull them out, but I show him the area where he should not pull them out. Anybody out there who's running after somebody with a lawnmower, don't run over that, don't weed out that, leave that alone. Just why? It's just weeds. No, it's not, it's medicine. Lola's asking where I am located. I am in Wisconsin. Let's see. I'm on the border of Wisconsin, what is called West Central Wisconsin. So I'm in this zone in Wisconsin that's kind of in the middle. It's called the tension zone, because if you go in a little further north or south, you just get different growing type of seasons, and you get different things grow there. So in the southern part of Wisconsin, they have a longer growing season, and in northern Wisconsin, they have a shorter growing season, but I'm in that mid-belt part where it's, I don't know, you kind of get a little bit of both of the plants from up north and down south. They both seem to be in this area. But we get about 120 growing days here. The weather's been really weird. So, every winter, it just seems like we get snow later and later. And springs are very unpredictable too. And it's just like you put stuff out to plant and then it gets frozen. It's just really strange. So that's where I'm located. I'm in USDA hardiness growing zone number 4. So if you know your growing zone for the United States, USDA hardiness zone, then you know what kind of plants you can grow and you can't grow. Some like it colder and some like it warmer. All right, so I've talked about some herbs. I've got some information down on the altars. I'll be sending more information out about altars and herbs through the rest of this week, and maybe through the rest of this 28 days of the Plant Priestess Exploration. But definitely this week I'll be sending some things out through email. And as you've seen in the Facebook group, I like to give a heads up of, hey, go check your email, so it doesn't get lost in all the other emails if you want to look at this certain thing that I've sent. So hope that makes sense. All right, I'm looking at the Plant Priestess poster that I've sent out. So I want to touch on some of the, I don't know what to call them, tenets, rules. They're not rules. They're just these things that I put down that I thought helped define what a plant priestess was and how I act as a plant priestess. So some of them that relate to today's topics is especially the first one. As a plant priestess, I will learn and know their names. So learning the names of plants is kind of a way, for me, it's kind of like almost a way to show respect, even though the plants themselves probably don't care what they're called. It's just, it's almost just like a way to show that, hey, I know who you are. I understand that you have these certain characteristics to you, and you're really good for these certain things for humans and the natural world in general. I just think it's important to know their names. And that way we can communicate amongst each other as humans and herbalists, plant priestesses, whatever you want to call yourself, so that we can carry on the knowledge for them. So learning their names, you can specifically focus on their common names. And I spoke about this in the last, the first video series that I did last week. And it talked about, no, it wasn't in that. It was in the video lesson I sent out. I sent out a video lesson about how to fill out a plant profile. And I sent of the first page of the plant profile. And in there, I talk about common names, Latin names, and plant family names. So it's kind of overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me when I first learned about Latin names. And the Latin names are also called scientific names, so interchangeably. And those are the ones that are really difficult to say for me, such as, let's see, yarrow is Achillea millifolia. So they use Latin because Latin is a dead language, meaning it's not being used by a group of people in a country or anything. So it's not changing. You know, there's no more slang words. There's no extra words being made like or happening in English. So it's like a static name or static language, so that it actually all over the world, plant names and animal names and all these botanical or biological names are in Latin, so that we can all understand the same thing. So if I'm talking about a plant to somebody from who speaks maybe another language, or who even lives on a different part of the United States, we'll know exactly what we're talking about if we use a Latin name. Common names change from place to place, from time changes and the plant name changes. So those common names are things that people use that describe the plant. So plantain, yarrow, those are all words that are considered the common name. So definitely start to learn at least the common name. I sometimes call things, I make up names. Oh yeah, that one plant that has that fuzzy thing on it. Yeah, I know what that one is. So sometimes I just make up a name for a while until I figure out what it's called. And then the Latin name, I really like learning Latin names. And then the plant family names are very helpful to learn for me as well. So yeah, learning the names is really helpful. Spend time in their home. So it's very important to create a connection with plants by being where they are as much as possible. There's some plants that I'll probably never see in my lifetime because they are in different parts of the world. But try to be in their place as much as possible, even if it just means finding pictures of them in their natural habitat, learning about how they live, how they grow. The more you see the plant in multiple stages of its life, in multiple ways it can be used, what it looks like dried, what it looks like freshly cut, what it looks like in a tea or a tincture, all sorts of things. When it's in a drought season, when it's in a perfect season, the more you see it, the more you'll understand that plant and really create this kind of relationship with it, so that you'll learn it quicker, you'll retain that information longer. That's what I've found to be the best thing with plants. The best is for me to get my hands on them for sure. So definitely spend some time in their home as much as possible in the way that you possibly can, because we're always bringing them to our homes. So sometimes we have to go out and sit with them and be with them when they're actually living in the soil and having photosynthesis happen in their leaves. me just see the things here. Showing respect, yes, showing respect and honoring of their offering to us. Yes, I love that, Jennifer. That's a really good way to say it. It connects you with the plant to learn their name. Yeah. So those are some things that I wanted to say. I'm just looking at the list one more time to see if I can. Okay. Weave plant connection into every aspect of my life. That's one of the things on the poster. And I would say that's really important with the altars, that, you know, I constantly have little messages to myself of plants and of nature and what's going on outside and what I'm missing outside. Oh, yeah, Jennifer, I'm not sure why, but I prefer to use plants that live where I live. I know there's so much medicine in plants from around the world, but I really like my neighbor. Yeah, like my neighbors. We have a visitor. Yeah, I'm on live right now. Can you see? There's nothing to see except me in my face staring at myself. Zoe, nope. This is Zoe. She's 10. She loves YouTube videos and wants her own YouTube channel. Zoe, please don't do that. Her hand is... Okay. We're having a serious discussion right now.
About what?
Plants. Zoe, go upstairs.
Why does it smell like burning?
Because that smudge. You know what smudge smells like.
A smiley face just went up.
Uh-huh. They're probably laughing that I'm being interrupted by a unicorn.
What do you mean a unicorn?
You got a unicorn on your shirt. Coco. Zoe, Coco. Thank you. Told you what happened. Where was I? Oh, you were talking about, oh yeah. So the plants that are around us, which gets, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to talk about how one of the ways to reduce overwhelm of learning plants and herbs and herbalism is to focus on, Zoe, please don't do that. Is to focus on the plants that are around you first and try to get to know them. If you're really feeling pulled to learn plants from a particular region of the world, then do that. So just rather than trying to learn everything all at once, really just focus on something. So for Jennifer, it's what she's connecting to, whatever is around her. And yeah, you laugh. I see those laughing faces coming up. So I definitely, in about my teenage years, when I was really figuring out that I had this connection with plants, I was very connected to the Great Plains, especially the Great Plains Indian tribes. I just had this fascination with them, and I learned a lot about them as much as I could. And so the plants were really important to me too. However, most of those plants, many of those plants grow in some way in my area in Wisconsin. So, because sort of Great Plains kind of all, where's the line for the Great Plains? I'm not sure. I think Wisconsin was maybe part of that. I'm not really sure. We had woodlands, but we had parts of prairies too. So I digress. Anyways, so yeah, I really focused on that. And then when I got into herbalism too, I really felt like I had to learn all the Chinese herbs. And for some reason, I just thought herbalism was only like about these certain types of really exotic plants. And I just was like, no, I really just want to learn what's in my area. These plants around here must have medicinal like qualities, therapeutic qualities, something about them. So I need to learn these too. And so I do, yes, like to learn what the plants around here can be used for. They seem sometimes like boring rather than some of the beautiful exotic plants out there that are used for medicinal purposes. But I found that the more I studied what was around me, the more they became beautiful and magic, and just, you know, the science of them was amazing too. So if you're having trouble figuring out how to kind of wrap your head around where you want to start with learning herbs, or where you want to, I know some of you in this group have been studying herbs for many, many years, maybe even decades, and you've had that same pattern of me, start and stop, start and stop. And if you really want to start to focus, just pick like 5 plants or more or less, whatever you want, and focus on those and get to know them as much as you can. Do a year-long study of 5 plants. It doesn't seem like a lot, but man, there is a lot of information up there on one plant. Promise you. Unicorns, parenting. Yes, parenting. Yes. So, yes, that's Zoe. She's the one that is schooled at home. We do an online school, and online is kind of misleading because the material is sent through books and worksheets to our house, and we do them here. But a lot of the communication with the school, and she does have a teacher she meets with once a week, are online. And they even read books to the kids online. They're like taped. They have little like Lego clubs and craft clubs where they're meeting online doing, and they're all like can see each other doing crafts and stuff. It's really cool. But she had a major medical issue hit last November, no, October 2017, and I pulled her out of school. It just wasn't working for her or for the other kids around them, and it was intense. And so glad we did that, because I was able to really focus on her diet. We really had to focus on supplements and diets and pharmaceutical medicines and appointments and therapies. And I mean, the list just went on and on. So it was really great to focus on those for her. Really difficult time in my life, I would say. So if you ever I mean, the condition she has is called PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcus. Basically, she's got obsessive compulsive disorder and other neuropsychological issues because of she's got like an infection in her body that never goes away, or never did go away. And now we've, you know, long-term antibiotics, unfortunately, scared to death, but it really helped us. It was the best thing. I'm a big proponent that mental illness is about inflammation and autoimmune disorder and infections and Lyme's disease and other tick-borne diseases that have gone unnoticed. I think that mental illness is always thought of as something that we can control. And really, it's just an illness of this organ up here, the brain. I mean, people get illnesses in their hearts and all other places of the body. And when the organ up here gets attacked, well then, what can you do? It affects your whole behavior and even writing, handwriting, I mean, all sorts of stuff. So crazy, crazy. PANDAS, PANS, kind of controversial for some medical institutions, like the one that was around here. So she was misdiagnosed over and over and over until I really put my foot down and found a specialist to help us. So we're doing much better, although we still have a ways to go. And yeah, anyways. If you ever want to know more about that, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Zoe says, PANDAS, cute name, not a fun disease. So Jennifer says, there's also a lot of invasive non-native plants here that have medicinal qualities, which are fun to learn about too. Autumn olive, garlic mustard. Definitely. And it's so funny you say that, Jennifer, because a lot of those invasives are being used for things like what my daughter has, PANDAS. It's for Lyme's disease. For a lot of those illnesses that have like multiple effects. I mean, Lyme's can be in your joints. It can make people have psychiatric issues. Some people stop walking. I mean, the whole functionality is just all over. So that kind of befuddles the medical field at this point, because they're used to like, oh, that disease does that. But when it starts to do all sorts of things in the body, it's kind of confusing for them to figure out what to do. However, a lot of these herbs that are out there, and especially a lot that are called invasive, are being researched and finding they have serious benefits to people with like tick-borne diseases and things like that. So invasive species typically are plants that are brought in by humans in some fashion, you know, either on purpose or an accident, and then we didn't realize how well they would do as plants, and they pushed out some native varieties. Sometimes they don't push them out too much and people don't notice them that much. We also have plants that evolved right here, you know, the native ones, but they can be aggressive too and push things out. So I like to use the word aggressive, like they grow well, they do well as plants. And I as well as many other herbalists, are taking note of those invasives, and they're kind of like giving us a sign of, hey, you're having this serious problem with that serious illness. Well, here we are, and we're going to show ourselves in abundance. So in a way, the ones that are invasive, we're looking at them quite promising. Like, okay, yeah, you're pushing out all of our other natives and all of our other medicinals, but maybe we should be listening. So some ones that help with lymes that are considered very aggressive and invasive are Japanese knotweed. It's huge. It's a huge plant. It's very aggressive here where we live, but it has a lot of great properties for helping people with lymes. Japanese barberry is a very good like microbial antibiotic, all sorts of things. So yeah, those are just a couple of them. There's all sorts of them. Yes, thank you, Lola. I don't feel bad harvesting as much. Yes, that's the other thing about them. You don't feel as bad harvesting from them because they're just so good at doing what they do. They'll just be back. There are some other plants, especially like if you need the roots, that, it feels a little terrible taking their roots out. But in some of those plants like barberry that just grow abundantly, you're not hurting them too much. Oh, yes. Lola says you'd be surprised how many non-native plants are brought in by truck drivers and trains. So yes, that's inadvertently a way that humans have moved plants around. So there's a lot of plants that we've brought in because they're pretty and they want to sell them, and brought in for landscaping. Some that have brought in to help stabilize the soil because they grow so rapidly over an area so quickly. They can help reduce runoff and they continue to spread like crazy. And then there's just the fact that humans are traveling so well that plants are moving on wheels. They're on cars and trucks and even on planes. Some if seeds have been blown into an airport and then the plane moves. When boats move from lake to lake, they're really encouraged to clean off their boat. So there's certain water plants and certain like snails and stuff and other fish even that they don't want in certain other lakes because they're spreading so fast. So yeah, there's definitely movement even though we're not sure that we're moving them at the time. And that's why airports will check people's luggage for a certain plant. People try to bring plants from one place to another, like, oh, we went to the tropics, this looks great, let's bring it over here. It's not really going to work. Japanese knotweed. Oh, knotweed is not good if you have high metabolism, though. It pushes the sugars through your body too quickly. Ah, yes, that is good to know. Hypoglycemics probably, and maybe diabetics maybe would be challenged with that. All right, I think that I've touched on everything that I've wanted to get to today, and then some and more. Always something coming out of my mouth that I don't plan, which is fine because I think that's really important to just go with whatever is needed. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Yes, sirree, Bob. Well, thanks to everybody for joining in. I will get that replay sent out through email as well, and then I'll be sending some goodies through email for the rest of the upcoming 7 days until we get to the next Thursday live. And hopefully everybody can share in the Facebook group when I put posts up about things, and feel free to just show pictures and stuff that you're doing and herbs that you have and plants that you want identified. It'd be great. Oh, right, dizzying week after consuming the juice. Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Devin. Wonderful. Take care, everybody.